Good evening. Today is January 28th, 2016. This is the Hyde Park Central School District's Board of Education meeting. We're being held at Haviland Middle School. May I have a motion to enter executive session to discuss confidential matters pertaining to the employment, future employment of a particular person or persons?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. And we're now in executive session. Thank you for being patient. It's a long walk for some of us from over there to here, so we took our time. So thank you very much for that. May I have a motion at this time to leave executive session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Thank you very much. We're now in open session. At this time, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is over there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. There are no additions or modifications to the agenda, so may I have a motion to accept the agenda as listed in the...
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That brings us to Hyde.
Do you want to go first, Garrett?
I'd love to.
Okay, great.
Good evening, everyone. So, I have quite a few things to mention tonight, which I'm thrilled about. First, at FDR, we had our Prism concert on the 20th. From what I hear, I wasn't able to attend myself, but our orchestra and our band put together a fantastic concert. As far as sports go, our girls basketball team recently had a win over Poughkeepsie. Our boys winter track team finished third in the division, and our girls winter track team came in fourth in the division. And I'm very happy to announce that I think Dr. Reich can agree with me. I think the FAFSA night was a smashing success. I don't know how well the parent side of things went. I know that many parents went and with the help of our guidance department, were able to sign up for the FAFSA, the Federal Financial Aid Service. And then from the student side, which I was able to participate with along with Dr. Reichek's coordination, and it was to bring students in to sign up for scholarships, which they may not have otherwise done. So giving them this opportunity to do so, I think really helped a bunch of them. I know it even helped myself. So I just want to give a special thank you on behalf of all the students for coordinating that side of things. And I would like to encourage everyone to come out to the Claudio Cares Snowflake Gala on February 5th from 6 to 10 p.m. It's at Locust Grove. There's more information on the district website. So if you're free that night, I would strongly encourage everyone to go and support. The proceeds from it is going to a computer lab at FDR, so the money is going right here back into the district.
Excellent.
Great. I did attend the Prism concert. It was really good. I mean, it's always good, but this year was definitely good. It's nice to see young people enjoying themselves and giving us good music. So
Excellent. Great. Yeah, it was terrific. And I just wanted to say, Garrett, thank you, because when the concept for that scholarship application came out, the scholarship workshop, application workshop concept came out, I reached out to 3 presidents. The president, of course, of the Interact Club, the president of the SGO, and the president of the National Honor Society, and all 3 presidents, Garrett being one of them, got us the volunteers for the night. So it was really a collaborative effort, and we had over 55 people come through there.
Right.
So, and I didn't get to a basketball game, but I did get to the Wallkill FDR gymnastics meet, and so that was a nice evening. That was actually right before the Prisms concert, so I think we've got it covered.
there was one other concert. Ralph Smith's concert was the day before the Prism. It was on a Tuesday. And I always like to see the difference between an elementary concert, which is good, and then a high school concert. I wish parents who struggle with listening to their elementary students practice would spend some time at the high school to see it's worth it. So that was also very good. It was nice to see Mrs. Vanderlee doing Ralph Smith this year, proving once again that a good teacher can teach just about anybody to sing, except me probably, but it was a great concert, a lot of fun. So that brings us to, if I can move ahead, Superintendent's report.
Yeah, I have no informal report other than it was Regents Week, and so far it's been going smoothly at the high school. And it is January 28th. We have not had a single snow day or delay or anything. So it is a very unique year.
Don't say that out loud.
I'm just celebrating up to now. February could change everything, but right now we haven't had anything, so it certainly made Regents Week easier, that's for sure. And the continuity of instruction for the students during the winter months, so hopefully, I'm hoping that I didn't just jinx us, but we're happy that we've had a good run of it.
Just to reinforce the unusual weather, on Sunday I traveled 180 miles from here to Philadelphia to see a basketball game between Villanova and Providence, two schools that my children attended. And while there, I got a phone call from my son saying, "Dad, I don't know if I'm going to be able to join you for the game." The interesting part is my son lives 2 miles away from the stadium. I traveled 180, and he was having difficulty traveling 2 miles. Basically because if the streets in that part of Philadelphia are about 6 feet wide, we can barely get a car through it, and if you can't get the snow out of the way, the cars don't move. I was very nice to him. I said, get your snowshoes out or your cross-country skis. You learned how to use both of them at Haviland when you were taking phys ed. So I said, you're all prepared. He actually walked 5 blocks where he can get a cab and came. But it was weird.
Where's Villanova?
Villanova is outside of Philly by about 25 minutes.
Oh, Villanova.
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 Questioning my New York City
Not at all.
English?
Oh, let's
Okay.
not go there.
Yeah. You're in my book.
Is our
like
geography
quiet.
lesson done? We're done with our geography? Okay, good. I would like to ask the board if we could switch 6.3 and 6.4, 6.2 and 6.3 and have the Haviland Middle School presentation before the Violet Avenue, if that's okay.
I move
to modify the agenda as Doug described.
Second. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Thank you very much. Eric, you're up.
Thank you very much and welcome. Welcome to the Haverhill Middle School Library. It's a little bit of a
Who was
change, but a little cozier venue.
Career one next.
It's going
If you
to,
want-
hopefully the sound and acoustics will be better for a board meeting, I'm hoping. So let me see if we can get started here. Again, like everything that I do with our faculty here, I start with our district mission statement. And in terms of the Hyde Park Central School District empowers our community to strive for excellence and embrace the opportunities of our globally connected world. And it's something that not only do we work on here, I know it's also the center of the work for the DLT, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that going forward as well. So starting off with some Haviland pride. I always put recent pride because so many things happen. We have so many kids. There's a lot of exciting events that occur. In the center, I spotlit two things that I wanted to talk about for pride. And actually, I have the actual original artwork right to the left of the board if you want to see it. But at the time I created this presentation, on display at New York State Department of Ed as part of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 6 Principles of Nonviolence contest. The contest State Ed put out. We get brochures from State Ed every year, and every year I encourage, and with the help of Ms. Schofield, Mr. Keegan, our two art teachers here, I encourage them to get kids involved and participate. You might remember we did a little bit of, last year, and it gets hung up in the concourse up in the State Ed building. But also, with that, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to try not to say it wrong, and Mr. Keegan's here because a lot of things changed in the last 2 days. We had several art winners who are going to be recipients of awards. So if we stick with the MLK exhibit, we also had Maria Hart and Caitlin Noon also submitted art up there, and that's up there as well. And we also received word just this week that we had 3 of our students receive the Silver Key Art Award, which is a pretty prestigious award, especially for this age or grade level. I'm looking. Yeah, so thank you. And that's Corey Kenny. Now, Corey Kenny is a student who was here last year when he did the artwork, and Ms. Schofield submitted within the deadline. Although he's up at the high school now, his artwork was still a part of as an award winner. And also Patrice Cranston, who authored this artwork, also has won the Silver Key Award, and also one final student, Nicole Wheeler. So we're pretty proud of that. And then on top of that, we have on the bottom a piece of art done by Alexis Quijada, 8th grade student, and she entered as part of the Grace Smith's House Love Shouldn't Hurt art contest, and she did a piece of artwork about stopping bullying, and she was also award winner. And for our Silver Key Award winners and for the Grace Smith House, there's actually be a presentation that the students and their families have been invited to. And if we look on the other side, I always have pride about our academic programs. We're always working hard. We're doing wonderful things here every day for kids. Our teachers do a fantastic job. And we had a wonderful winter concert series. In front of you, I gave it to everybody. You'll see the Hawkeye. Now, in our budget this year, we were able to start a writing club. And this is the first actual publication from the writing club. It's the first edition of a new Haviland newspaper here. And we're very excited about that. And we're actually be printing out probably our second edition. We'll probably have 3 of them out before the end of the school year. So I just wanted yours to take, and there's a couple for those in the audience on the table over there. You're welcome to have one before you go. Of course, we're always proud of our Haviland athletics program. We are, and I'll talk maybe a little bit more about that. If you're not aware, we opened up a community room, which was part of our DSE focus work in terms of community involvement. That opened in November during our parent-teacher conference night. We had a ribbon cutting and such. And although I won't divulge the name, we have an upcoming Q92 Teacher of the Month, so pay attention in February for that. So as far as academic performance goes, you're looking at 13-14 and 14-15 results in both ELA and math, ELA on the left, math on the right. I also put a note on the bottom around student refusals, test refusals for the assessment. And ELA, we did have 47%, and math, we did have 56%. Grade-wise, you see the percentage of students who scored at least a 3 or a 4 on the assessments. And one thing, when I didn't put the numbers here, when I went deeper into the numbers, I was seeing that although we had that large number of refusals, our numbers of 3s and 4s didn't dip. And I was pretty happy to see that. I mean, there was minors here and there, but overall, our 3s and 4s were strong despite not having in some areas of math, 150 kids less take the assessment. And also, it was the first year, this round of assessments, where our 8th grade students who were in algebra didn't participate in the 8th grade math assessment. So there was another block of students that would typically perform well that isn't part of that cohort also. Well, we do other things here too. We have accelerated courses for students who earn high school credit. That's integrated algebra regents and the earth science regents this past year. So you see the numbers 13, 14, 15. The parentheses are the number of students in each of those courses, and the percentage is the pass rate. And we're doing a wonderful job there. We knocked the park with all 3s, 4s, and 5s on the integrated algebra. It's a new scale system they have this year. It used to be a 1 to 4, but now with the Common Core exam, it goes 1 to 5. So this has got a lot on this slide, but there's a lot of work going on. So if you bear with me, I'll talk a little bit about the work of the BLT, and then I drew arrows so where it manifests and how it's happening here in the building. We're doing work on what I'm calling connected practices. It's about sort of ensuring that the experience around instruction is similar for all students, no matter the grade and or team. And we're working through our BLT and with our full faculty on that. The community room, which I spoke a little bit about, but providing a space within the community for the building to use. In the focus review rubric, it goes into how are we being inviting to the community, and where's access for them to use school resources in the building. So we've created that space with some grant monies and the help of Cora's office. Last year it was just an idea last year around this time, and now it's actually happening. We've just instituted using systems we already have. The high school's been using this for years as part of up there when they had the school messenger do an autocaller for student attendance around unexcused absences. And for us, it's not about kids not coming to school at this age. It's about really getting good, clean attendance records. There might be excused absences, but parents aren't sending in notes, that sort of thing. Or maybe they spent a little longer in vacation over the winter break and they didn't notify us that that was what was going on. So for us, it's about really cleaning up our attendance records. That's also one of the goals for our focus review. We got concerned about our attendance percentage for last year. Although it's near the mark, we don't want it to dip or a gap to widen. Mission and vision, we are working really hard on that. I feel like it's a topic that, much to my dismay, we've been talking a lot about we're getting to, but I feel pretty comfortable that we're to a point of looking at really actualizing the district mission statement within our building instead of having a secondary mini mission statement just for Haviland, but then really working with what we have here to have a clear vision of how we're going to get that work done, how we're going to actualize that mission. And then finally, I wanted to announce our second annual HMS Community Night. You might remember last year, first week in November, we had sort of this little idea that really came to fruition, and we had about 200 folks here who got to participate in having a meal and childcare and doing some really high interest workshops about what parents might want to see here at Haviland, so they'll come back into the school. We triangulated research and the surveys that we did for the focus surveys to the parent involvement surveys over the last couple of years really pointed to, we'll come if you give us things that are worthy. And it was an idea that happened, and it proved right. So we're going to continue that idea. Doug, I think about you and your comment about lessons. One of the workshops this year, Miss Marine and hopefully some of the music staff are going to put on, how do you support your student at home with lessons? What could that look like? I mean, for me, my son is now taking an instrument, but if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't know how to do that work and how to support them at home. But now there's a workshop for parents who may be like me, I'll probably try to attend it, so I can learn how I can support that work at home because it's important. And so those are the sort of the work of the BLT and our focus goal work, which is really the focus. My faculty will tell you that it's coming out of my mouth every day because it's important work, and it's important for us to really keep it in the forefront of everything we do because we're not going to stay there forever. I firmly believe that. And so in terms of extra or co-curricular extended day, we're always working hard to provide opportunities around instruction and or activities for our students during the day. And you guys have heard about the Healthy Kids Literacy Program. This is year 3. We're continuing to do it this year. It's grant funded. It is Healthy Kids comes as part of 21st Century Learning, is it? Part of the Healthy Kids, thank you, Cora. And they come in, they run 3 sessions. They're 7-week sessions. They're Monday through Friday. They're 3 hours. It's 3 to 6 p.m. and then transportation back home. And they work on literacy as a big block. And it's the portion. They're higher certified literacy instructors, and then they benchmark kids coming in, and they do assessment at the end to see progress. And I'm anticipating our results for this year. We're midway through the second session right now. Bard STEM Camp, it's another grant program. I work with Cora's office often, and Kim Neisler, Director of Math and Science, who's also has been the coordinator for the Bard STEM. And we just actually had our first weekend. It's 5 Saturdays, one a month between January and the end of the school year. Then like the second week of July, they go for a full week, and it's up at Bard College. They work with Bard professors. They work with teachers in our building, and they do STEM activities. Not quite up to STEAM yet, but we're getting there. But they're doing STEM activities right now. And finally, this is a program that I talked a little bit about last year because it was really small and it was new, and it was like 6 tutors, and they were coming once a week. And we've grown it with Dr. Doreen Sacamano, part of Marist College Teacher Prep Program. We've grown a Marist tutoring program. We have 15 tutors now that come in, and we separate them in terms of tutoring ELA or math and 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade. So we run several classrooms. It's 1 day a week on Wednesdays, and it runs through the semester. And actually, this program is sort of ingrained to the actual syllabus that the professor has for classes, expected work. So it's new now, but it's grown. We planned over the summer. Their guidance department, they do a fantastic job with getting kids based on teacher recommendations where we can give support outside the school day. And officially clubs, as you know, we've been very fortunate. I've been very happy to every year to maybe grow it by one. It's a wonderful opportunity for kids. We have our drama club, ecology yearbook, student council. Those are all things that were here before I got here. Bowling club is back. Writing club is new. The ski club, as you guys know, at Netherwood a few months ago approved that, and they actually went on their first ski trip, I think, last weekend.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did,
During
right?
the non-snowstorm up
Yeah,
here.
we're at the non-storm. But it's still making snow up there, I think, so.
Yeah, they were fun.
And then we still continue the intramural sports here through that, and that runs in fall and spring. And character education, really important at this age. It's really important to give students great direction. On the left, you see some of the programs that we run. Of course, it's not fully inclusive, but it's a lot of the good things that happen. And our PBS program is strong and wonderful under the direction of Katie Rolson. She's really taken it to a new level, and her team has been doing fantastic work. Our PTA assembly from New York's Finest on Internet Safety and Awareness was a big hit inside the building. It impacted students in a very real and good way. I had a lot of positive feedback from kids, from parents, from teachers in the building. It also included one evening session. I wish that was more strongly attended, and I worked with Sue Cirilli as liaison between the building and the PTA, and we did what we could, but it just means we can build on it for next year. Pictured here is Officer Maribella, our SRO here, and also Miss Regina Hernandez, who's our CAPE counselor here. And they started a little program here this year called Too Good for Drugs. And it's a pilot program we started in our 6th grade classes. We did in study halls. And it's a collaboration with CAPE and the SRO. And it really boils down to goal setting and good decision making. They feed some really good information. They do some role playing. They have some great discussions. There's a workbook included in it. And it's a pilot program. We'll probably touch maybe 200 to 270 6th graders this year. And we hope to expand it out as we sort of realize and sort of assess what it did and the impact it had. Also, under the direction of Ms. Hernandez and CAPE, we're doing the Reality Check Pledge, Red Ribbon Week, No Name Calling Week. Our student government did a drive for the Hyde Park Food Pantry under Ms. Stump's direction. She's a laws teacher in 7th grade here. We also are currently gathering materials to send care package for Valentine's Day for troops. Project Fallow, which is a big hit here. I know that Ms. Burrows, we always send a very large packet from Haviland. We're always proud to do that. And during the holiday winter break, we did adopt 2 or 3 families that we sort of had a giving tree for, and the faculty and staff provided. And it was actually over Thanksgiving and the winter break. Did I turn that off? Oops, sorry. And finally, parent and community involvement. I feel like that's the thrust of a lot of the work that we do. We have a lot of great things happening. First, I have to start with our HMS PTA, and Essential Partners doesn't even describe it. They drive a lot of what happens here, and we have a wonderful group of ladies on the PTA. and they sponsor our 3 grade level assemblies, the Internet Awareness Assembly. They're sponsoring it. They're bringing that on. We have Kit's Interactive Theater, which is sort of acts out parts of history. She's coming in next week on Tuesday, and that's three different assemblies, one for each grade. We've been doing that for years. It's a very big hit between the students and the staff, and it actually takes the historical reference sort of in line with what's happening in the solstice classes. The honor roll breakfast, the second week of February, we have our second quarter honor roll breakfast happening. Our school dances, our 8th grade picnic, our moving up day activities. Those are all big part of the Haviland experience that our HMS PTA makes very real for our kids in this building. And of course, partnerships with the community organizations. Our SRO program is very vital to the work that we do. And having Officer Maribel in class has been a wonderful thing in terms of that community involvement. Our Dutchess County Cape partnership, Grace Smith House, they're not only part of the art contest, but they're also in our health classes doing presentations for kids as well. And then our teen center, which is part of with Diane Cullen in the Hyde Park Rec Department. And we actually have a teen center not this Friday, not tomorrow, but next week. And then finally, I added the HMS community room, and I can't plug it more. That is available for use. We would like people who are part of the Haviland Middle School community, our families, to come and use if they need to. I've been steering folks here if they come in for a meeting or like a parent meeting during teen time and you're coming 15 minutes early. Come on in there. We have a lot of literature. We have a lot of information. Sit down and relax so you don't have to really be in the busyness of the main office. It's a really quiet space. If you haven't seen it yet, I do encourage you. It's literally on the other side of this wall. So if you were to come out towards the main lobby, it's the last door on your left. Take a look in. I'll make sure that's open up before the meeting's done. And is there any questions?
Yeah,
Are there any questions?
yeah, one, are there computers in that room?
There is one computer right now. I'm hoping to actually, as we grow more of the Chromebook access, to provide some Chromebook access in there as well, so I can have more than one station.
Do you have the carts here?
We do have Chromebook carts. Unfortunately for us, they're used so much during the day. I don't have one of just available to put in the community room because they're used instructionally every day.
Okay, it would seem you would get better participation if we offered more computer access for people that may not have internet access at home.
I agree. I agree completely.
So why don't we think about,
That'd be wonderful.
Eric, thank you for your presentation. A lot of good information there. But one of the things that I noticed was that under academic performance, roughly half the student didn't participate. And I guess I just wanted to say it out loud that means that the statistics in front of us are effectively meaningless.
I can't disagree with you there. When you're being evaluated with 57% of your students not taking the assessment, devil's in the detail. I think 18% of our students took the 8th grade math assessment. 18%. That's not a measure of the wonderful work that happens every day here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, a couple of questions there. The first is that since we don't have the state assessment to understand the performance of the department and the school performance when it comes to curriculum items like math and English, are you looking at other sources of information?
Sure. Most definitely. The first thing I point right to is we do a MAPS assessment, an NWEA test. That happens. We benchmark in the fall. We do assessment in the spring. We measure growth. And I actually built it one step further. I put it in, I started last year. I think around the district, it's now happening this year in the AIS programs to measure student growth there as well. So we can have a midterm measurement. In fact, I actually just met with our AIS teachers throughout this week and very proudly able to exit students out of AIS based on their current performance. So we're using multiple measures. And certainly teacher feedback and teacher recommendations around student progress and academic abilities is really important to us as well.
So you've got MATS data that looks at, is that just math or English? Or
MAPS is reading and math.
Okay. So do you know the numbers off your head? Off the top of your head, what do they say about the direction?
So the one thing I like about the MAPS data is I don't have a holistic number off my top of my head where my kids were and where they're going. I will say that I did look at it last year, and they could break it out in a quadrant around growth and expected growth. And like our state scores somewhat, our kids are moving and making growth. I'd like them to move and make growth at bigger leaps and bounds, but I know that takes time as we're still sort of part of the implementation of the Common Core piece happening. But they are making growth, and they're doing great things. And also, Cora, go ahead.
I would just add that, and I think I did share this with the board maybe earlier in the year at the end of last. One of the things that we can highlight in Haviland in both the reading assessment and math for the MAPS is that we are given the average growth nationally, because it's a test that's given all over the country, millions of students. There's a predicted growth for the norm group. And in both ELA and in math, the Haviland performance was significantly higher than the growth that was made by the national group. And that was true in the last 2 years. So that's a nice piece of data that speaks of both the growth that's been made, but also the performance that's been had compared to the norm group nationally.
I appreciate that, Cora. I believe that to be true, but I couldn't remember it 100%, so I didn't want to state it if it wasn't true. And the other part I'll say about the MAPS data and the assessment data that we do use is teachers use it every day. They use it to inform their instruction. If you're an AS provider, use it to benchmark and look at individual discrete skills. So they're really working with that information. It's important to the work that we're doing here right now, absent of, I would call, like probably you said, another valid measure to look at.
Good. The other question that comes to mind here is that I'm conflicted when it comes to the standardized testing, and I can understand why parents and students, I'm not quite sure how to phrase that, are opting out of the tests. In some ways, I think it's considered a protest against over-testing. So I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on, have you discussed this with parents and students? Is there anything underway that can change the perception of the test, or in fact change the situation such that there isn't this perception of over-testing?
I think I have some answers for that. The first, I would say, in the last 2 years, the shift has really been around the test refusals that we get from parents on behalf of students, although I did get one student who wrote their own letter last year, has been around supporting teachers and feeling that it's unfair for teachers to be evaluated by a system which parents felt was flawed in its rollout. So that's the first thing I would say. As you guys are, I'm going to imagine, aware, like the current political climate of testing and assessment and accountability is changing almost by the day. And although I don't know if I'll get more letters this year or less letters this year, but I do know that there is a push to not have the accountability measure tied to teacher assessment and principal assessment. So I wonder if that'll impact it. I did go out on a limb because I know how important participation is to this building and not being a focus school and not slipping to that level as I look at trend data. That I did reach out to the families last year. I wrote a letter to them with Cora and Greer just to say, you know what, this is important. And honestly, my take on it is their kids are doing hard work every day. The assessment's the assessment, but the hard work is happening. And I also have a take on it, and this is my own spin about rigor and about grit and the importance of sort of taking something that's hard and seeing it through the end. They're going to need it. I got 8th graders that are going to say, I'm not going to do this now because it's permissible by the state. And in less than a calendar year, they're going to have to take a Regents exam at the high school. And they can't choose not to take it, or they choose not to graduate. So there's value there. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, whether there will be a swing in terms of, based on where the accountability measure is now shifted away from teacher and principal accountability. I'm wondering if there'll be a shift there. And if last year's a gauge, I was already sitting with a stack of letters. I hesitate to mention I don't have any now.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have one more question. I probably missed it. How What are the hours of the community room? When is it open?
Well, right now, we have it open and available for anybody to use during the school day.
During the school day?
Then I will treat it as I will any other room in the building after school hours that they can use building use. Only because we have to account for who's in there, what's happened. There is school property in there and that sort of thing. But right now, open during the school day and for building use, if somebody wants to have an event or a function in there, they're welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I'm working late, I just leave it open.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Now, who's doing
I'll do we need to go back.
yep, so we're going to go back to now the Violet Avenue Elementary School.
Oh, there isn't. It's just, okay, it's just on the agenda. Okay.
Mm.
Before I move on to the topic of the Violet Avenue School, I was remiss in not mentioning under Pride that we got some nice press for two of our students who are involved in a collaboration with the Grace Smith House. It's a prevention and education program, and they have now accepted 7 students, 2 from FDR High School. And the group of students has adopted the name United Peer Council. So the 2 students from FDR are Vitra Chandra and Janelle McFun, and they are now in the first cohort of this group of students called United Peer Council. And the mission is to bring teen dating, violence, and bullying awareness to other high school students. And basically, they're working with the Grace Smith House, and they're getting a lot of training. And the premise is that teenagers will open up to other teenagers more readily than adults. And so we now have 2 students in this cohort at FDR High School who are being trained and participating in this awareness for anti-dating violence. So congratulations to those 2 students for participating in this program. We are pleased that each year our collaborations with the Grace Smith House, you heard Eric mention them, and certainly last meeting, Rick Party at the high school, and this is yet another collaboration with the Grace Smith House.
As long as you reopen that, could I just make one comment? It is so nice for all of us on the board to see so many staff members at a meeting, and we really appreciate it.
The next topic under superintendent's report is just a brief discussion, get a yay or nay or a nod from the board. I've met a couple of times now with the Town of Poughkeepsie Historic Preservation Commission, and they're well aware that Violet Avenue School is on the National Register of Historic Places. But there is a process in place and an application to become listed on the Town of Poughkeepsie Historic Preservation List. And it's a pretty simple application. As part of the application, if they accept us, which we're led to believe they will, it will be voted on if we fill out the application, it'll be voted on at a Town of Poughkeepsie meeting. Basically, we just need to fill it out with our name and address, any architect we're affiliated with right now. The reason for the application is just to have a special designation under the Town of Poughkeepsie about the historical significance, the aesthetic value, and the uniqueness of the architectural design of the proposed landmark. It does not obligate us in any way to do anything or run anything through the Town of Poughkeepsie. It just is a special designation. If we apply, and certainly the Town of Poughkeepsie Historic Commission would like us to, and we receive that designation, part of the process is they have a public meeting in the Town of Poughkeepsie, and then they notify anyone within 300 feet of the exterior perimeter of the property that it will be a public discussion and a public vote of the Town of Poughkeepsie whether or not we're accepted, and that's just a notification. Again, it doesn't obligate the district. At one point, when I first met with them, they thought it did. I made it clear that we are a separate governing entity. We have enough going on with SHPO when we want to touch any of our historic buildings, so we weren't looking for any added approval procedure to go through anything. But what we get out of it is we get the special designation from the town of Poughkeepsie. They get to list Violet Avenue School as part of the historical property that's within their town limits, and maybe just a special relationship. So I put it out there for discussion. If the board is interested, we could submit this application, and I could keep you apprised of timelines.
Are there any implications about this that would affect the adjoining properties in any way? Would they be affected, like, would they be restricted in some fashion that they might think detrimental to their own, homing values or something? I'm just curious. If it affects them, are we going to see all the neighbors come to the meeting and say, what are you doing this?
No, to my knowledge, it doesn't affect them negatively. I don't know if anybody would personally see it as a negative to be next to a historical landmark. I would consider it a positive myself, but
I was thinking zoning.
zoning. No, I don't. It doesn't affect their zoning. What they did, and I'm glad you asked the question. What they did point out to me is that should the town want to expand, let's say, Fulton or 9G, one of the considerations would be through their approval process, and we have nothing, if they want to expand 9G and it's going to encroach on property owners, then it has nothing to do with our historical significance. However, when a town tries to expand a roadway, they do take into consideration what would it impact. And if the town of Poughkeepsie could say, well, you want to, someone's proposing, some construction company is proposing to widen that highway, one factor that would be taken into account is that you're going to encroach on historical property.
The walls.
Right. That would occur under SHPO anyway,
Okay.
because we're national.
Okay.
So, but they did bring it up as if they said, well, it'd be like a double whammy. You're on the National Historic Register of Historic Places, and you're on the town of Poughkeepsie. It might help prevent, something like that from occurring. But I think it would just be it doesn't affect any current homeowners and their zoning, how they might personally feel about the designation. But I can't imagine having the designation of the town of Poughkeepsie Historic Commission being any more burdensome or positive than the National Register of Historic Places.
Okay. Any comments from anybody?
Yeah, I believe 9G is a state road anyway, so the town doesn't have any jurisdiction on that. But that's why you have the public hearing for any negatives that come up, so. But I can't see anything happening like that. It should be all positive to everybody, but who knows?
Any other comments? Why don't we go? Everybody's in agreement, we'll go forward with this?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Now, that brings us down to 6.4, which is State of the Common Core. And
What state?
maybe that's why we have such a big audience.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I thought it fitting, since we've had the State of the Union, we've had the State of the State, Albany Mayor just did the State of the City, we should do the State of the Common Core and the APPR. So several things are happening even as recently as the last few days. And I thought we would
Cora,
start.
Can you hold 1 second? Because
Yeah, of course.
our wonderful cameraman, Steve Hughes, is going to turn out the lights so we can actually capture this.
Certainly.
Thanks. We don't want to miss this exciting time.
I know.
Critical. This is actually
Everyone is
very
waiting.
critical information. Seriously.
Riveting.
All right.
Riveting.
So first, most people, I think, at least on the board and some in the audience, are aware that we have two regulations relating to the annual professional performance review, or the APPR, which is the way in which teachers and principals are evaluated. 3012C is the old regulations, and 3012D are the new regulations, which are just in process. And for us, not yet applicable, but will be shortly. And for the APPR, there are a few things that are true in both sets of regulations. The use of test scores is present in both sets of rules, if you will. All teachers and principals in grades 4 through 8 do receive scores from the State Education Department, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. All teachers who do not teach those grades have what are referred to as student learning objectives. And basically, in the absence of a score that's provided by the State Department, the teachers are held to a measure of growth for their students that's based on either a state assessment, if there is one, so that would apply to a high school teacher or a teacher at Haviland who has Regents level courses, or an assessment, in our case, that's created at the local level. And we have to sign off, Greer has to sign off as the superintendent on the level of rigor and the comparability levels of those assessments. So that's true in both the old rules and the new. New language for this year in the 3012D is very specific about the growth measures needing to provide an accurate measure of a year's growth in student performance. So rather than having the opportunity or the option of using a mastery test, everything that's used for the purpose of those student learning objectives now must be a growth measure. And that will have an impact when we start talking about what we're going to choose and what we identify for teachers in that part of the accountability system. That student learning objective needs to be written in such a way that it represents at least 50% of a teacher's caseload. And as I mentioned, all the local assessments need to first be signed off on by the superintendent, and then the commissioner needs to approve them. It was an interesting little time for a couple of months. Initially, we heard that we actually needed to send every local assessment that was going to be used for SLO purposes to the state for review by the commissioner. And we thought that's just crazy business. There's no way that could actually happen. And then it wasn't long before we heard, no, you don't have to actually send them, but the State Ed Department does have to review our documents that indicate our commitment to that comparability and rigor, and they do have to have the rubber stamp. So that happened very quickly. There are some real changes in the way the teacher observations will happen. There are still a number of things that are determined at the local level, and we are in the middle of negotiations with both the teacher and the administrators union. But there are a few things that are different and that are not negotiable. One is the number of the number of observations that need to be completed. The law requires one announced and one unannounced. And very different in this new regulation is that the observation conducted by the building principal must count for at least 80% of that portion of the teacher's score. So in the past, it made no difference whether it was the building principal, a director, an assistant principal, myself, regardless of who was conducting the observation, the evaluation was weighted exactly the same. Now there's a very clear emphasis on the weight of the principal's observation as the building leader. At least one observation must also be done by someone assigned to someplace other than the building. So we're at Haviland. Mr. Shaw can do observations, and the ones that he does are 80% of that teacher's score. No longer can the assistant principals be the other person. So a teacher will need to be evaluated once by the principal and once by either a director, one of the CSE chairs, Aviva's assistant superintendent, myself, but there's very clear language that one of those observations must be done by someone who is not assigned to this building, and it's right down to the language of the beds code. So our directors, for example, all have a beds code that is attached to district office. Same is true of me. So any of us could do that second evaluation. But it, as you can imagine, if you think about it for a minute, will create some real logistical intricacies and challenges, especially when we think about our elementary principals and the need for people to be potentially observing in other buildings. So there's much to be figured out relative to all of that. Still negotiable at the local level are the actual tools or the rubrics that are used for observations for both teachers and for principals. So we've talked about the test refusals, or affectionately referred to as the opt-out issue. And I do want to share that there are some steps being taken. Very specifically, things around the number of items. The test for this year even is being changed so that students will have fewer items. And very importantly for many, the tests will be untimed. So for the first time in the spring of this school year, 2016, students will not be timed for the ELA or the math tests in grades 3 through 8. And we've just shared in the last 24 hours the recent document that came from the State Ed Department describing those changes. In the ELA assessment, students will be reading one less passage. So there's some change happening there, and I'll share more in a minute about how and why some of that's happening. And as has been mentioned, we do hope that students will participate and that parents will begin to feel more confident about the assessments themselves, the change in attachment between test scores and teacher accountability and teacher evaluation. And there's more on that on the next slide. One of the most serious considerations for the district and for the board is that under the new law that was just passed in the last month, the Every Student Succeeds Act, federal funding will be in jeopardy if we don't reach our 95% participation rate. And I think, as Steve mentioned, all of us understand and have our own thoughts about the political climate, the decision to make a stand where you can. But I do think that there are some real serious efforts being made to respond to that.
Yeah, just to put a number on it, 26% of our budget is federal funding.
Good, thank you.
State funding, which comes from the federal. So
Right.
we are aid dependent at 26%, more or less. Don't quote me on it's close.
Yeah, yeah, it would have a significant issue, an impact on us. So Aim High New York is an online survey that was open for several weeks, and basically the invitation was to people all over the state to give the State Ed Department feedback about the Common Core standards themselves, the evaluation process, and all that goes with that. And this is information that is online on the State Ed website. It's the first brush, if you will, at looking at all of the respondents and the data that was gathered. So 10,500 people went online and responded to the survey. 80% of those were either teachers or parents. 71% of them were supportive of the standards themselves. And I'll say in my own experience speaking with parents and with staff, when we talk about the actual standards, there are very few people who say the standards are poor. It's much more about the way the results of assessments are used and all of that. So this survey was in line with what I hear from people and what my colleagues hear. 46% of the teacher feedback was recommendations about standards either being moved or in some cases being altered in some way to reflect what they felt was more appropriate. And of that, the majority of the concern was about the standards that are written for our youngest students. real concern about developmentally appropriate expectations for students and the way those are described. And there's been much in the media and online about that concern. So a lot of emphasis on what we're expecting of our youngest students. So how is everyone proceeding with all of this? The State Ed Department is continuing to really disaggregate all of that survey data and really kind of try to tease out all of the issues. There is a commitment from the commissioner. Greer and Aviva and I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with her not too long ago. So there is a commitment to continue revising and examining the standards themselves. Very importantly is that the Board of Regents did vote on a 4-year moratorium on the use of test scores for teacher evaluation. And what we've been told is that we will still receive scores for our teachers. They're being referred to as transitional scores. So we'll still get the information, but we will not be permitted to use those scores in the teacher evaluation process. And for many of our parents, as Eric mentioned, much of the concern and the reason for refusing the tests is because of that relationship. So we're hoping that with that moratorium, there'll be a perhaps different approach to the assessment system. I've already mentioned this year's tests. They will be shorter in length. This indicates actually next year, and the reference to next year is about the number of days. So this year's assessments will be the same number of days that they have been in the past. However, each testing session will include fewer items, and they will not be timed. Next year's tests, we've been told with a promise that not only will they be shorter in length, but also the testing period itself will be shorter. The other piece I should add that's not on there that was in this document that we received within the last 24 hours is that the state, and we did know that they had contracted with a new vendor, the state's contract with Questar, not to be confused with Questar BOCES. Questar is another private vendor. Their commitment is to the use of New York State teachers in item writing. And do I have someone in the audience involved in that process or no? No? I'm looking at you, Mike. Okay. I thought that I had heard that you might have expressed interest in that process.
Yeah.
You haven't heard yet? Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Under the
And
bus,
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
We appreciate it if
we-
you, just
yeah,
your willingness, we
would be-
appreciate it.
Right, we would be thrilled to have teachers from the district involved. And the plan moving forward is that they're going to be pulling teachers from across the state to work with Questar to do item writing with a lot of training first. And that as the new tests are rolled out, particularly in the spring of next year, some of those items will be field tested. So again, we're hoping that there'll be greater confidence for all of us that the assessments given in New York State are written by New York State teachers with the support of that vendor. We are all over the state continuing to negotiate the new system under 3012D with the new regulations. We continue to host our sessions for families on the Common Core. The date here for Community Night is March 3rd. Thank you. Yep. And then, my observation, and I think the observation of my colleagues, is that in the midst of all of this turmoil, what's really happening every day is that teachers and students and administrators are coming to the buildings and doing the best that they can on behalf of our students. And I have daily appreciation for that. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Anyone?
Regarding the federal penalty for due to opt-out, didn't No Child Left Behind have a similar phrasing that talked about opting out would result in loss of federal funding?
It was similar, however, not as severe, and it left greater latitude to the states to make decisions about what that might look like. So while we were, dare I use the word, threatened with the potential loss of state aid, it was always couched in that term of potential loss. And in fact, we didn't realize any loss. I think the current sense is that the language is less flexible in the new federal law.
So wouldn't it behoove the New York State Education Department to tell the districts that it's no longer optional for students to take the tests?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
one of the threat that they're going to take away federal funding was there before, and from what I can tell, no one ever lost any funding when they didn't meet the threshold. And so, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you know of anyone that lost funding?
I don't know of anyone locally.
And from the research I've done on the web, I've spent a couple hours. Nobody lost any funding. So my question becomes, why would we expect them to behave differently now?
Yeah. And I don't know. The law was just passed. How that will translate into what happens in New York State is unknown. Right now we're in a very strange position of having a moratorium that was voted on by the regents that's in conflict with a law that's still on the books. So that's just in our own backyard. I'm not sure how all of that will then be influenced by what happens at the federal level.
Yeah, the opt-out issue is interesting to me personally because I'm frustrated with the high-stakes testing movement. I'm frustrated that they are testing using tests that aren't fully verified, and anyone that wants to look at the history of New York State standardized testing can see that the numbers change every 3 or 4 years. They readjust the baseline. And so there's never any opportunity to use that history to actually do what you're supposed to do, which is try to improve the education. I'm sorry, I don't rant here, but I'm already into it, so settle in. But on the other hand, I, for better for worse, enjoy statistics. I like numbers. And so I prefer the idea of standardized testing that's going to give me some gauge on how the school is doing, and use it as not a punitive measure, but as a measure to help us understand where the areas of concern are and address them. So I'm torn on this issue about standardized testing. And the other issue the other problem I have with standardized testing is the use as a method for evaluating teachers.
Yeah.
I don't think there's good research that proves that using standardized testing as a measure of growth is useful. And actually, I think we've shown, at least in our district, that there's evidence that the parents do not like it used as a growth factor either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a complicated issue. I would like to see us, for better or for worse, have higher participation rates. Although I certainly understand and to a degree agree with those who opt out.
Yeah. Understood. And the other thing I should mention relative to the assessment system is that under the new regulation, under 3012D, the local 20 assessment is gone. So just as a reminder, in the past, we had the 60% of a teacher's score coming from the observations, 20% coming either from state assessment scores or that student learning objective or SLO, and then the other 20 was a local assessment. And in Hyde Park, that local assessment was the vocabulary assessments that students in kindergarten all the way through grade 12 took. At elementary, they take just 1 or 2. At the secondary level, they were taking them in each course. This school year will be the last time that those are administered, at least for that purpose. If, departments or teachers make decisions about the worthiness of assessing students' acquisition of vocabulary, that's a different conversation. But relative to teacher accountability and evaluation, the vocabulary portion, or that local 20%, is gone. So some would view that as, okay, we have said now that there's one less test, or in the case of a high school student, many fewer assessments over several weeks' time, where they're taking a vocabulary test in every single class. So those will be administered for the last time this year.
So there's at least one test that was required, which is no longer required.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you, Cora.
You're welcome.
That brings us to public participation. May I have a motion for it, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'd like to say, welcome back, ladies. It feels like, we're back in business again, so thanks for coming out. All in favor? Opposed? We are now in public participation. Now I expect one of you to get up, okay?
Hello, everybody. Mr. Sheldon, are you paying attention? My name is Bobby Goodman.
Is that one B or two?
2 B's IE. No Y, that's a boy. I just want to say I am a parent at Haviland. This is my 3rd child to go through Haviland, and I love Haviland. I am a part of the BLT. I'm very excited about working with Community Night again. And it's a great staff. I have had, I think, more people try to sign up for the Bad Apples game from here than at the high school.
Wow.
So just as many kids here are going to be there for that game. So that's that. What else I want to say? As far as the testing goes, my son does not take the state testing, but I do believe that the MAPS testing means a little bit more. I think that they're more individualized, and I think that you can see their individual growth more from those testing than from a state test. So the information that Cora had about the growth is great, to have for the board. My other thing is that you are going to have a lot of work on your hands with this new change of time. So I'm interested to see how each building will handle how long will kids have to sit when other kids are done? What's the percentage of kids that aren't done before you move the kids that aren't taking the test or that are done with the test? So I look forward to seeing that information. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board? Wow, well, it's a start. Anyway, it's a start.
Steve's coming up.
Oh. The bionic hip is coming.
Good evening, Steve Hughes. As much as I would like you to table agenda item 8D, 10.8D, I realize that's not possible. So that's the item where you accept forced resignation. And I think it's important to recognize that back at that time, we had, I believe, 3 tech directors, none of whom worked out. And prior to that, it was a struggle just to get the director of technology position. And Forrest was the one that made it important. He was the one that really served the district in such a way that technology has become an integral part. A lot of people here don't remember the time when we had computers that were donated by parents when they got a new computer. That buildings were wired hit or miss depending on whether they had parents willing to pull wires. But Forrest, has brought not only his expertise, but his personality to bear such that we really have a district that's ready for the 21st century. And it's also important to recognize that it was, in a way, it wasn't just Forrest, but in a way it was, because Forrest has assembled a team of really knowledgeable and experienced people that are willing to do what's necessary. So I just wanted to say thanks to Forrest for what he's done for the district, and I wish him all the best in his new job. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Sorry, I forgot. Also, with the MAPS testing, I think you'll find that there's very few refusals compared to the state testing.
Okay. Mr. Hughes, you want to get back up again, too? No? Okay.
He can't move that quick.
You can't move that fast, that's true.
Yeah.
Said by
Check the
who?
rules. I think that was a-
Can't move that fast? Wait a minute.
That's an ongoing event.
There's
Next,
the
it's the
puck.
spring season, we're gonna have a race.
Okay.
5 yards.
Is there anyone else? And may I have a motion to exit public participation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Would anybody like to respond? Steve, we all agree with you. It's with sadness that we see Forrest go, but joy in the fact that he is advancing, and it's good for his family, it's good for him, so we're happy for him. Anyone else on the testing? The time difference, that is a good question. And I think it's time for us to think about that. So thank you for bringing that up. I guess in terms of the testing itself and state testing, in my limited opinion here, is that a number of people got together and said, we want this, and this to change. And in order to get that, we're going to withhold our students, maybe not for all those reasons, but some of them. And I think if you really study what's happened, all those things have either changed or are about to be changed or will be changed in the next couple of years. So I would encourage people to give the tests a chance. I think they're going to get better, and I think by taking them, you will get better feedback from your children as to what you want to tell us the next time when we come up to the thing. So I'm hoping that happens. Any other comments? All right, thank you. May I have, let's see. I jumped ahead here. This time, is anybody prepared to give a district leadership team update?
We're
Didn't we
there-
do that last?
yeah, we did it last time, and our next meeting hasn't happened.
Okay. May I have a motion for discussion of the reorganization meeting date? Greer and I discussed the fact that the traditional yearly meeting is during 4th of July week, and some people schedule vacations that week. It doesn't have to be that week, and can in fact be the following week. And I wanted to get a feel of whether or not the rest of the board members would like to move that from the 4th of July week to the next week.
Yeah, right now it's scheduled for July 5th.
There is some obligation to have it within.
Yeah, it's got to be within.
First 15 days.
First 15 days, yeah.
And if we move it, preferably it wouldn't be to the following Thursday, maybe the Tuesday or something.
I'd definitely like to see it moved.
Okay.
I don't know what my plans are that far out, but planning it for the week of the July 4th is
Well,
ludicrous.
that's why we thought we should bring it up.
Yeah.
I'm okay either way myself, but any other thoughts?
I'd like to see it moved also.
All right. So why don't we move it from the 5th to the 12th?
Tuesday's the 12th?
Or do we, yeah.
Yeah, let's do, I mean, I'd rather get it over with earlier in the week, not get it over with, you know what I mean?
Yes, you do.
Foot in mouth.
Yeah.
I'd actually, you
Okay.
know, if we're going to postpone
Yeah,
it, let's
yeah,
just
yeah.
postpone it till the
Yeah.
following week and do it on the Tuesday. So that way, anybody who wanted to travel the second week in July maybe could leave, you know,
All right.
after the Tuesday.
All right, we'll need a resolution to do that, so that will come on the next board agenda. All right. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thank you very much.
Very nice. That brings us to unfinished business. Is there any? And there is none. All right. I have a motion for 10 point, for the consent agenda, please.
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion other than what we've already said about Forrest?
We didn't answer one question. What happens if we refuse to accept his resignation?
I told Therese that I could try that, but I didn't think it was going to work. So,
The wheels of motion are in motion.
yeah, so, anyway, all those in favor?
Actually, I did.
Oh, you wanted to say?
I just have one question. Can somebody tell me a little bit about the $5,000 donation from Lowe's Toolbox? Just what that is?
Do you know, Linda, what, is that the,
I don't know too much about it, but I know that Melissa, I'm not sure if they applied for it or if they were just awarded it, but Melissa did have plans to use it for the outdoor classroom.
I mean, it's nice, generous.
Nice, yeah.
Want to recognize it.
All right, thank you. We haven't voted yet, right?
No.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Which brings us to special ed, I believe. I have a motion for 11.1, special education placements.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Dan?
I've reviewed the packet and I recommend its adoption as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Again, that brings us to
Policy.
policy 11.2, first reading of policies 5405 and 5405-R, which is the regulation. This is the wellness policy. This is the one I mentioned last time, the last meeting, where the words about recess detention being modified to say to be used judiciously and not banned completely. However, we are getting statistics from January through March on how often recess detention is used, just to make sure that it isn't a rampant thing. So we've been told it's not. So we'll see in the data, I guess. So any questions about the regulation or the thing? All right, all in favor?
Wait.
Oh, we didn't have a motion yet? Oh, have a motion, please, then. I thought we did.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I kind of like to talk about the, in the policy under physical activity for, was it 5405? It said the district's physical education program will adhere to the curricular requirements of the Commissioner of Education and New York State Learning Standard.
And no school in the state of New York does.
Yes.
I know
So
that.
and we're saying we will.
Yeah, I know. This comment comes up every year in that we know that we don't meet,
We just have trouble saying we are and
Yeah.
we don't.
well,
Oh, think of it as we should. But we,
No, it doesn't say we should.
it's a goal.
It's a goal, but it doesn't say goal either.
Doug, I don't know if it makes a difference, and I don't know if there was conversation at the policy committee, or even if the state would view this as too picayune.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if there's a difference between the curricular expectations and the seat time expectations. So in terms of the curriculum,
Oh, the curriculum,
we're
yes.
absolutely adhering to
It's
all of the
It's
standards.
the amount of time that we don't,
That we struggle with,
Yeah,
but the curriculum
yeah, I'm sorry.
itself is
Go for
met,
that.
yeah,
if that helps.
okay.
That helped.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Cora. All in favor? Thank you. Opposed, I guess. Is there anybody opposed? No. Okay, that brings us to 11.3. I hope you read this one, on the gap elimination and the foundation aid. Basically, it's a statement that we want to send to the state saying, you haven't met your obligations, you owe us money, what are you going to do about it, in a kind of a nutshell.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? And, I don't know, that and $9.50 gets you a Starbucks coffee, right?
We will have a letter for the board to sign.
Fine.
Okay, you have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
A quick question. In today's Poughkeepsie Journal, they made a comment which surprised me. In the governor's presentation, I thought he said that this, we were going to get $1.4 million extra and that the
Mhm.
budget was going to increase by some number. In today's article, they indicated that the way it was written is, it was said that the increase in the expenditure for education was over in the next 2 years. And one of the legislators questioned it, says, well, you only have a one-year budget, so it's a very misleading comment. And I'm just wondering if our percentage and our numbers were based on that 1.4 million over the next 2 years, or is that truly a number we're going to see this coming year?
For the adjustment for the gap elimination, we'll see that over the next 2 years. But in total, we did have state aid increase.
Yeah, that's for this year.
Yeah.
That number is real?
I don't remember the exact amount. I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, I think the promise is that the second year of our GEA will be next year. I think it's about $500,000. But you're right. How can he promise it when next year's budget hasn't been done? But I think that's just his plan or his goal.
His threat.
That's right.
I was just concerned more reading it. I didn't know how to interpret the number we were given as to how much the increase in state aid was because of the way we're sort of bumping against the cap.
Yep. Yeah, so our gap elimination wasn't fully restored. It was partially restored for this year. And then we did receive, and then the rest comes from the other increase in state aid, which, again, is bringing us up to where we should, closer to where we should be.
Our overall increase in state aid for next year is 4.64%. And that includes the building aid, but without that, we're still at 4%.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, moving on to 11.4. I have a motion for the memorandum of agreement with St. James Tutoring Incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I just wonder if someone could explain to us what this group is going to be doing and what specific group of students it'll be working with?
Aviva has
I
this one.
can, yeah. When students are in placement, so they may be in a drug or alcohol program or a hospital, there's tutoring that's required to be done, and we have to pay for that because it's out of our district, it's not our tutors. So we have to have agreements with them. So this isn't, we're not replacing or doing anything different with our tutoring.
So this is a contract we're signing with the company, this company to provide the tutoring that's required of
another-
us in an
correct.
area where we can't directly provide our tutors.
Correct. So
Okay.
students who are
So
in
it's filling a gap.
placement. Yes.
Have we done this in the past?
Yes, I don't know if the board, if always these have come to the board, but we understand that now that needs to happen. So you might
I-
be seeing them from time to time, and I'd be happy to point out when they
I
They
can
come.
speak for 15 years and I haven't seen it once.
What we've gotten in the past are invoices that I sign and we pay.
Okay.
So
Fine.
now you're actually seeing it beforehand.
Thank you, Viv.
You're welcome.
All right. All those in favor? Oh, you got another question?
Yep. I see an hourly rate here, and with a lot of these types of things that we see hourly rates and then we see maximums. But I don't see any kind of a maximum on it.
As long as the student is there, we don't get to set the rate.
Okay.
And as long as the student is there, we pay for their tutoring. Most of them are not very long-term,
Okay.
but
So-
we don't, we're required to pay for that, and there's no negotiation about it.
I just wonder, like, how big of a commitment are we making here? I mean, is this a $10,000, $100,000?
We're not asked to make a commitment. We don't know how long students are there. It's generally just a week or 2 or 3.
Okay.
They're not long-term programs for students, and we don't place them there either. So a student will, something will occur at home, and students will be placed.
Okay.
And then we'll just find out, if the parent contacts the school, we'll find out, but otherwise we find out when we get the bill for the tutoring.
Okay.
And what's the budget code? What?
It comes out of our contractual, and
Out of
we just,
contractual, okay.
and we have that kind of budget where we know
Wanna
that we're
make
gonna
sure
get
it's
some of that, and
in the budget.
It is, we
Okay.
prepare for that.
I mean,
All right,
I
thank
don't
you.
anticipate that it's a huge item, but I just always feel a little nervous approving something that's so open-ended that,
I don't like handing my checkbook to somebody else to fill out the checks either.
you know.
You don't do business with Halliburton very often.
Okay.
Okay.
Probably not.
I mean, it's certainly less than the cost of educating the student here.
Any other discussion before I step on my foot again? Or all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Well, we're back to public participation. May I have a motion to re-enter public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Would anybody else like to address the board? Going,
Gone.
gone. May I have a motion to exit public
So moved.
participation?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. There are no other matters that I know of, anyway. So, board subcommittee reports? Were there any new ones from, I don't think so, right? Anybody? No. Okay, technology?
Absent our board members, but the technology subcommittee did meet this week and spent a fair amount of time talking about our plan to bring additional technology to the middle school next year. We'll be planning a number of informational sessions for parents around that. And then talked briefly about the departure of Forest again, an important piece, and the impact on that, the impact of that on our planning around the Smart Schools Bond Act. So you'll see in my journal tomorrow some reference to how we're planning to move forward for that.
Okay, if I might ask a question, will you or any members of the technology committee that are also district employees be on the search committee for the?
Yes, thank you. Yep, that's also in my journal. I put out a note to everyone on the tech committee as the place to begin, looking for volunteers to be on the interview committee. That same invitation went out to our administrative team. So
That would be for the new director of,
for the new director of technology, yes.
and also for the new director of fine arts and
Well, different committee, but.
I know, well, no, I believe that we want to hire
Oh, well,
somebody who is
yes,
tech savvy, that
we
is
can
also
certainly
music,
do that,
music and
but-
art director, and because I want a STEAM program.
That sounds wonderful. I would also, however, make sure that the invitations are really clear to our
Well, come on.
current arts groups so that
Well-
they don't feel like they're left out.
Obviously,
Yes, I'll
but I
make
mean, I
sure we
just
have
wanted-
really solid interview committees that
By any
represent
means.
STEAM, STEM.
What's the STEAM
you
and
know,
STEM?
STAN.
STEM's the team.
so all
STEM
the
to team. STEAM.
Acronyms that we can find.
Okay.
Stop touching that.
Upcoming meetings. Thursday, February 11th, 7 p.m., Board of Education meeting at the district office. Friday, February 11th, 2016 is early release day for students. Monday and Tuesday, February 15th and 16th, no school for students. Monday is President's Day, Tuesday is Superintendent's Conference Day.
And Cora, what's Friday night? The music, the
Yes.
a cappella?
Yeah,
Could you?
a week from Friday night is the countywide a cappella
Acapella, right.
festival at the high school at 7 o'clock. One of our music teachers is coordinating that again this year. And
Okay.
it's the a cappella groups from all the local high schools, and definitely a wonderful night of music. So hopefully people will come out for that.
Yeah.
I
and,
hope the John Jay group is there. They sang at the Chamber Breakfast. They were fabulous.
Yeah.
They were really, really good. So, not that we
We'll
aren't.
be at
well, that
Claudio
we aren't
Cares.
good,
Some
but
of us will
that-
be
they
at
were really,
Claudio
really
Cares.
good.
Yeah. A lot going on that night.
Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, can I remind people that I would like all to sign this letter that we're going to send for getting our money back from gap and elimination and things. So before
I'll
you
sign it
leave, if you
twice.
could sign this. Now, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.